Picture the single hardest job in volleyball, not scoring, not serving. Standing at the net, 6 foot 6 inches tall, reading a hitter's shoulder angle in a fraction of a second, and deciding, jump now or die. Do it wrong against the best attackers on the planet, and the ball is past you before your feet leave the floor. Do it right, over and over, at the highest level the sport offers, and you don't just win volleyball matches. You break the will of every team that has to face you. There is one player in the world right now who does this better than anyone alive. Her name is Zehra Güneş, and the players who have to hit against her, Olympic champions, World Championship MVPs, the most feared attackers on the planet, have started describing walking up to serve against her, like walking into a wall that happens to jump. So how does a kid from Istanbul become, by nearly universal consensus inside the sport, the best middle blocker on earth? And why does almost nobody outside volleyball's hardcore fan base know her name yet? Stick around, because the answer says something bigger about how this entire sport actually works. Zehra Güneş was born on July 7th, 1999, in Istanbul, Turkey. She grew up the oldest of 4 siblings, a brother, Furkan, and 2 younger sisters, İrem Nur and Mina. In a country where volleyball, particularly women's volleyball, occupies a cultural space that most Americans have almost no reference point for. In Turkey, the women's national volleyball team isn't a niche sporting interest. It is a national obsession, filling stadiums, dominating sports television, producing athletes who are recognized on the street the way NFL quarterbacks are recognized in the United States. She joined the youth ranks of Vakıfbank, one of the most successful volleyball clubs on the planet, based right there in Istanbul, at just 12 years old. 12. An age when most kids are still figuring out which sport they even want to try seriously. Zehra Güneş was already inside the development pipeline of a club that would go on to define almost her entire career. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. What actually makes a middle blocker great? It isn't simply height, although height matters enormously. Güneş stands at 198 centimeters, 6 foot 6, with a blocking reach that towers over nearly every opponent she faces. But height alone doesn't win volleyball matches. The sport is littered with tall players who never develop the specific split-second tactical reading ability that separates a good blocker from a great one. What made Güneş different from an unusually young age was the combination: elite physical tools paired with a reaction speed and positional intelligence that her own coaches began flagging almost immediately. The results arrived early, and they arrived consistently. At the 2015 FIVB Volleyball Girls U18 World Championship in Peru, still a teenager, Güneş was named Best Middle Blocker. Not just a good tournament, the best in the world at her position at that age level. 2 years later, at the 2017 FIVB Women's U20 World Championship, she picked up the exact same individual honor, Best Middle Blocker, again. That same year, she helped Turkey's U23 team win the World Championship outright. By the time most professional athletes are still fighting for a regular starting role, Zehra Güneş had already been recognized as the best in the world at her specific job, twice, before she'd even turned 19. She made her senior debut for the Turkish national team in 2018, helping the squad to a silver medal at the FIVB Nations League. 3 years later, she was on the floor at the Tokyo Olympics, playing every single match as Turkey pushed to a 5th-place finish, the best Olympic result the program had produced at that point in its history. During a grueling 2-hour quarterfinal loss to South Korea, something unexpected happened. Güneş started trending on social media mid-match, as clips of her blocking spread beyond the volleyball world's usual audience for the first time. It wasn't a medal. It was a loss, in fact. But it was the moment casual sports fans outside Turkey first noticed her name. Was Tokyo a turning point or just a preview? The following seasons answered that question emphatically. In 2023, everything accelerated. Güneş anchored Turkey's middle during a breakthrough FIVB Volleyball Nations League campaign, that ended in the country's first ever gold medal at that event. She led the entire tournament in blocks, 45 of them, and walked away with the Best Middle Blocker award for her trouble. Weeks later, at the 2023 CEV Women's European Volleyball Championship, Turkey staged a series of dramatic comebacks to win their maiden European title, with Güneş delivering decisive blocks in both the semifinal and the final. Two historic firsts for Turkish volleyball in the same year, with the same player anchoring the net for both. At the club level, the resume reads almost like a highlight reel of individual honors stacked on top of each other. Best Middle Blocker at the CEV Champions League in both 2022 and 2023. Best Middle Blocker at the FIVB Club World Championship in 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023, 4 times across 5 years, at the single most competitive club tournament volleyball has to offer, facing the best middle blockers from every corner of the globe. The Turkish League MVP award in 2022, the Turkish Cup MVP the year before that. In April 2024, Vakıfbank's club president stood in front of the press and made it official. Zehra Güneş would captain the team for the upcoming season. Her 13th year at the club, she had joined as a 12-year-old. She said afterward that she felt genuinely honored and that she intended to fulfill the responsibility with everything she had. This wasn't a young talent being handed a title for marketing purposes. This was a club recognizing that the player who had grown up inside their system had become, unambiguously, one of the most dominant forces in world volleyball. There's no verified quote from a Simone Biles or a Serena Williams commenting directly on Zehra Güneş, and we're not going to manufacture one just because it would make for a cleaner story. Volleyball, for all its passion in countries like Turkey, Brazil, Italy, and across Eastern Europe, still occupies a strange, undersized footprint in American sports media relative to how many people around the world actually watch it. That gap is exactly why a player who is, by the near-universal assessment of coaches and analysts inside the sport, the finest middle blocker competing today, remains a name that most casual American sports fans have simply never encountered. What is documented extensively is what the sport's own institutions think of her. Best Middle Blocker recognition at Youth World Championships. Best Middle Blocker recognition at Senior World Championships. Best Middle Blocker recognition at the Champions League, at multiple Club World Championships, at Nations League gold medal campaigns. That is not one impressive tournament. That is a sustained, decade-long pattern of the sport's own governing bodies, looking at every credible middle blocker on the planet and repeatedly landing on the same name. At the 2025